Recording.
Oh man, back at it again. We freeballed that last one, so this ought to be fun. We got a little more structure in this one. We have our thoughts on the board.
Oh, thanks for jinxing it now.
Yeah, we're gonna totally butcher this one. So, I figured we'd start it off with some fun.
Right.
So, Graham, you have some interesting news about your little road trip that you took a couple of weekends ago.
Actually, last weekend.
Last weekend.
Yeah, so last week.
Yeah, that's true. We ain't made it to Saturday yet.
Last week was interesting for me, but yeah. So my reunion was this past Saturday, and it's a lot of fun. But there was
Now, which side of the family was this?
This is my father's side.
Yeah.
So something got done that ordinarily doesn't happen at any fucking reunion. But the more I thought about it, so I had a cousin who was present at this reunion who ordinarily doesn't show up.
Right.
Only because at the time they lived in Austin, and for some reason, if you live more than like 100 miles away, it must be too fucking
He lived
hard.
in a wet county, though, didn't
It
he?
must be too fucking hard to drive or whatever. But again, that goes to how I was raised. Is my grandfather was like, you better have a really good reason for not showing up to a family reunion.
Right.
So anyway, my cousin, we went and did a beer run.
All right.
Which
We're going to liven the party up.
typically beer runs and family reunions don't go
mix
together.
Yeah.
Not at least not
On the Graham side.
concurrently, Yeah.
Well, I don't
Yeah.
know. Unless you're recording an episode of the Springer Show, you probably don't want to do that. Yeah.
So anyway, so we went and got beer, came back.
Graham loaded with a bunch of teetotalers is just entertaining. That the story had me. You had me at that. So go ahead.
So my cousin comes walking out, and it's in a like an open air, like a kind of auditorium sort of room. Mm-hmm. So there's no walls, no partitions. Everybody sees everything.
Was it a church? Did you
actually,
drink at a church, Graham?
No. So my cousin comes walking out. He's holding two fucking beers.
Shiner box?
Shiner box.
Yeah, you can tell what those are from like a mile away.
Yeah. So you may as well be just walking with neon signs.
Yeah, you should have wore a Budweiser hat and a Miller Lite t-shirt.
So he comes walking up to me, hands me the beer, and I'm standing. I may as well be standing in a circle of people. Mm-hmm. And inside me, my eyes are like big as saucers going, I can't fucking believe you just did this.
So the most
In front of everybody.
Which is funny because me being shocked that somebody's bringing me beer.
keep your train of thought here, because the most entertaining part of this is looking at Graham have to kind of cover up his nakedness here. You know, Graham's always out there basically with his dong swinging in the wind going, F you!
I'm a helicopter and everybody.
You!
Yeah.
So he gets around his family, which are these teetotalers. Which there's nothing wrong with
the
that.
great equalizers.
No, there's no, and hey, that's their rules. That's their game. I get it.
And it's the teetotaling family that I'm okay with.
Right.
But it's...
But they made you uncomfortable, and I'm just enjoying the hell out of that from my perspective.
Well, at some point, it's a little bit hypocritical, and by my estimation, because the people who are motherfucking it,
Yeah,
during their heyday,
they were
fuck,
tossing them down,
yes.
baby.
So the more I got to thinking about it, though, is hey, all those other reunions that I got to back when I was younger, if you were walking around with a glass that clearly didn't come from the fucking table,
Right.
where the tea and the punch is, who's to say that wasn't what I'm doing right now? The only difference is I'm being upfront about it.
Yeah. No, yeah.
So,
well, your one good saving grace, or what you could have saved the day with, was a solo cup.
Well, that's what we ended up doing.
The red solo cup.
Yeah,
you
so I
go.
said, you know what, I'm going to take this beer to the back, and that's what I ended up doing. But we had this conversation later on about, sort of the generational changes and thoughts on shit like that.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, but it all ended up okay. There was no hurt feelings really or anything like that, right? Nobody, phone calls weren't made afterwards, and
well, I mean, there were some conversations that happened.
prayer
later.
request went out.
No, that's funny. Yeah. What? A Southern Baptist throwing a prayer request?
Yeah.
Out? Are you kidding me?
Right.
That never happened.
Well, it's funny because you're Catholic
Yes.
by birth and baptism,
By raising, yes.
and then you're Baptist by family,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So we have very similar backgrounds there. And what's really funny is a young Catholic boy, every gathering involved booze.
Oh, yeah.
Every one of them. And it was usually in the basement or the hall of the church where they had a bar.
Right.
So it's funny. So family reunions, weddings, funerals, anything, there was a bar.
It was on.
And so when I got married, and my wife is Baptist, and I go to Baptist church with her, and I used to go to her family reunions, much like yours.
Right.
They teetotaled as well, didn't they?
Yeah, big time. And the red Solo cup with Kool-Aid and iced tea was the only acceptable
Right.
mode of drinking. Or remember the big Bubba mugs?
Yeah.
Those were kind of big out there too.
The whole big gulp mugs.
Yeah, all those. Yeah. And what's funny is talking about the matriarchs and the patriarchs that put these family reunions together. Now I can tell you, it's probably been 15 years since her family put one on. When we first got married in our early marriage, almost every year.
Right.
And so it's funny how you guys are still finding a way to make that happen.
Y'all kind of knocked it off, haven't you?
Yeah, because they all. Just
we have too.
Yeah, you don't see that anymore.
No.
And it was because her grandparents and their siblings were all big on these reunions, and then now the young people don't give a shit.
No, they don't.
So luckily, you have a few that show up.
Yeah. So we're still trying to figure out how to bring it back to its heyday, because I don't really know why reunions go away. Or
well,
at least,
it's interesting that you bring that up, and I can tell you a big portion of that is probably social media. I know we talk about that a lot here, but you have a lot of contact with people.
That's a good point.
You have a lot of people
texting,
exactly,
Facebook, all of it, Twitter.
You're in
Instagram.
touch with them constantly.
Well, you see the fix. Oh, they're on vacation. Look, they look so good. Yeah,
exactly.
You're right.
You already have all the information
No,
at your fingertips.
Yeah. Plus, it's easier, and it's easier where you don't have to see them.
Right, and I still don't like you very much, so just stay over there.
It's easier to like. It's easier to like their posts than it is to say, "Hey,
I'll be at home drinking." Right,
because if you think about it, some likes could be, "Oh, just bless your heart."
Exactly.
That and think about it. You can sit at home and look at the vacation while having a beer, and nobody's going to say anything.
Right.
So it makes it all comfortable for everybody.
It's funny because there's definitely amongst the best of families, there is a bias against gathering.
Yeah.
Really, it could be distance, it could be time. I mean, now you got kids playing multiple sports: soccer, football, baseball, and it's all weekend shit.
Yeah.
Okay, so to that, so my brother and I, when we were growing up, and we were involved in sports too, but the way that it was handled with my parents was, if you have a game on the day that now when I was growing up, it was always, the reunion always occurred on Sundays.
Right.
Okay.
So Sundays, after church,
which is really hard if you live out of town.
Right.
So in that respect, I can say that for some people not traveling and have to, squeeze a 300 mile trip home.
Right after
on a Sunday.
Yeah.
When
I can remember making those. That sucked.
Actually, that actually makes a lot.
That's
of
the
sense.
other point too, because people do live farther away. Yeah.
So, but when we had games on Sundays, depending on what time the game was versus what time we got out of the reunion and started heading home,
You didn't make the game.
Either you got to the tail end, or you didn't, and that was just how it was.
They ain't coming, coach.
Whereas,
What, do you not want to play ball, boy? I remember getting that speech.
Whereas some people I know that were like, well, we can't attend because little Johnny has a fucking game on, whatever.
Right.
And which I go back to, my grandfather said.
Would that get you blacklisted?
Well, I
or
don't
at
know
least a scolding, or are they talking to, or something?
Probably, but I never got.
It never happened to you
because we were always fucking there,
right?
And I don't, good, bad, or indifferent, but that was the rule. Is if he says to be there, then you're there,
right?
Because Granddaddy said so.
Exactly. Well, it's a bygone era, sadly.
Yeah.
So it is.
I
but
enjoy the shit out of it.
It's funny though too, because we were talking earlier about what's acceptable behavior and what's not acceptable behavior at these reunions, and the alcohol was one of them. Music. Did you guys have a music thing?
No.
Yeah. So it's funny because I've been to a couple where you get this one guy that's got the truck.
Yeah.
And he opens up the doors and he cranks up his monster speaker system while everybody's trying to be under the. Ours were all at pavilions in the city park.
That's where ours was.
Yeah.
When I was growing
up,
the most.
Well, the kids could go play ball and all that stuff while you know what I mean. It was activities, exactly.
So now with my family in Louisiana, that's a different kind of environment because music is a very big part there.
Oh yeah.
So, and it's not, it's not trucks.
So was it Zydeco stuff though, and all that?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
It-
Everybody's
Zydeco,
playing a string instrument or something.
Everybody
Yeah.
brings instruments of some. If you're playing an instrument of some sort,
But again, it was family doing stuff together. If you
Yes.
think about it, that's almost like a ball playing event. Where
Yes.
the kids are playing ball. If you're sitting around playing instruments, it's the same thing.
You can kind of relate that to the family dinner at home, though. Think
Yeah.
about it. As kids, we always had run and gun meals because we were doing sports or working on a farm or doing a job somewhere. So it was you took your meal. But on a Sunday, the rule in our house was you got up, you went to church.
Right.
When church was out, we had a church social or a lunch with somebody. And it was basically, like you said earlier about gathering of multiple families, maybe not of the same bloodline, but families in your church or whatever it is. And you would play basketball.
No,
or football or
we had
baseball.
several
Yeah.
families that we did that
that's
way.
how we
So,
were. And
yeah.
so that was that way for a long time. But what I guess, like you said earlier, between social media and commuter living, it kind of, and also too,
it's the breakdown of the nuclear family. It
There
really
you
is.
go.
And I knew.
Yeah.
That's where
Yeah.
I knew we were all going
Yeah.
there when we got there.
yeah,
but
and that's
it's,
the other thing is
It is a breakdown of the nuclear.
The
family.
loyalty to one another kind of fades really quick.
Yeah.
and it's kind of sad, but it is good to see though that you guys are trying to keep that together because
yeah.
I love hearing the stories. We did a couple podcasts on them. I remember the one we talked about where y'all went on the drive to Palestine, or was it Crockett? And you found a Thai restaurant or something on the way
that
home?
was when we were coming back from my uncle's
Funeral, that's right.
Yeah,
I love those stories about going back home like
Yeah.
that. Because, as a
Thai restaurant in the middle of
East Texas, yeah, it's funny, but it pulls the threads back,
Yeah.
of what life was like, and it's kind of fun to. But Sam is never at a loss for having interesting shit to talk about.
No, always. That's why we keep him around.
Yeah, he's got this.
That and he brings the computer to run the board. So
There you go. He's got this. He's got this unique way of drawing fire, and I think this is an interesting. Because Sam basically is a parolee of Facebook jail.
yes, he is. We were so proud of him too. He served his time
24-hour
with dignity and honor.
incarceration. Yeah.
Well, so what was it? Should we talk about what it was that got you banned?
Banning it changes a man.
It does.
So did you watch the movie? What is that? Will Ferrell when he's going to prison, and Kevin Hart was his getting him ready.
Yeah,
for prison?
he's getting ready for prison.
Now that'd be fun if you have to. If at some point in your life you have to put on your resume that you got banned from social media. But so the banning occurred because of a.
It's a photograph, wasn't it?
It was a photo of. Okay.
It was a chick with a swinger. I'm going to get it out there.
So it was this girl
Trying to
wearing
clank
kind
a
of
bell.
Yeah.
provocative, like probably almost like a little black dress, only it was pink, and yeah, she had a fucking dong.
Underneath it. It was not visible. It was like it was an
couldn't see
outline.
anything.
It was an outline of a dong.
So so when I posted, and I can't remember if it was something that I got from another Facebook page or if it's something I got from Reddit, because I tend to draw from a lot of different places.
YouPorn. I mean,
So,
it could have came from anywhere.
Yeah, screenshot, because I've been telling you about this new program I've been using.
Right on.
Right.
So, but I'm telling you, when I posted it to my private wall that everybody clearly knows.
Yeah, this is this is the private page where we go to just post whatever.
It's like there's no
It's
fucking
the sticking
rules or
post.
anything.
Yeah.
And at the time, the way it was set up, where even if you tried to search the damn thing,
Yeah, you couldn't
nobody
find
could
it.
never fucking find it.
Yeah.
But
Facebook did.
Facebook did.
Goes
And
to show you your privacy is not protected on those
yeah.
private grids.
And
That's really
It wasn't 45 seconds
that it was up.
that it was there. Then I was getting this alert that this post was in violation of community standards, but it didn't tell me that it was me. It just said, "Hey, something."
A
just
post?
posted.
Yeah.
A post has been flagged and taken down. Blah blah blah. Here's what it was.
We're sending the squad.
So all of a sudden, I was like, "Who the fuck?" So what the fuck happened? Then
Me.
It's remove this admin, or actually, no. What it's asking you to do is basically police yourself, and if this person is in your group, maybe you want to delete them. I was like, yeah, like that's gonna fuck.
Yeah,
me
I'm going to
up.
delete myself.
delete myself. Really?
Yeah.
Or it's if this activity continues,
We'll delete it. We'll delete you for you.
We'll delete the page.
The page.
Yeah.
So I was like, 30 people who all made the decision to become part of this group to look at sometimes questionable stuff
It's funny.
is suddenly going to get shut down because somebody who's not even a part of the group
Right.
had a fucking problem with something that was posted.
So it's
That's
funny.
fucking
It's funny
stupid.
you say that because everything you just described in their letter to you sounds like a conversation I had with a good friend yesterday that just took a sexual harassment class, a mandatory
Yeah.
sexual harassment class is a pre-employment condition.
Wow.
So
and
in the
so-
military, we had those are sharp classes.
Okay, so in New York, apparently it's mandatory, and so he was going through. Yeah, you can't take a job or hire somebody until this has all been completed.
Wow.
Or I look.
So this is state law.
Yeah, it's a state law. It's state
Yeah.
law.
I would
or-
look at it as you're going to show me how to do this.
Yeah.
Are you kidding
That's
me?
what I was going
That
to
was
say.
the
It was a
first
how-to
question.
program.
That's the first
We
question
all
I
had that
asked him.
same thought.
So here's some of the funny things that parallel exactly the words you just said in that statement that they said to you about your page.
Right.
That you as a supervisor are responsible for recognizing and heading off any potential or perceived sexual harassment activity by somebody.
So it's like that movie with Tom Cruise. You have to know
Oh, yeah,
ahead
the
of
Minority
time.
Report,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
What if I agree with it?
right. Well, that's the thing. So the other thing is that if you fail to do so, you are liable for prosecution under New York state law.
Wow, that's crazy,
Yeah.
man.
And then if your supervisor, if you don't immediately report it, you are also subject. And if he doesn't act on it, he is subject.
So it's just a whole daisy chain of
It's a
failure.
I'd
That
love for somebody to explain the logic and
Yeah.
make it make
Behind that,
sense
sure.
when you're all done.
Yeah.
It gets better. It doesn't have to be sexual harassment. All that person has to claim is to be uncomfortable.
So
That's it. That's the words.
I
That's
could go to
it.
work with you, Ken, in
Yeah.
this state, and then I could say,
That's a low price of entry right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
this guy has gray hair. Gray hair makes me uncomfortable.
Yes.
And then they have to do something about that.
That's the question I brought up. to him.
Exactly.
I said, well, what if you lost somebody? We live in New York, so what if you lost somebody in the Twin Towers on 9/11?
Mm-hmm.
Would he be considered safeguarded under the uncomfortable rule, or would he be called a racist?
Yeah.
The,
If it was, let's say, some
Yeah.
Middle Easterner or
yeah,
something
if it
like
was a
that.
Middle Easterner or somebody from India, even if it was a misclassification.
Sure.
So
Some physical characteristic of their
Yeah.
background
yeah.
that they can't help.
So who decides gender, race, creed, or activity or look
Right.
determines what is uncomfortable or comfortable, and what is actionable, which is really amazing to me because it's an open-ended deal like you just described on your page. We're not only going to punish you,
Yeah.
we're going to punish everybody in this group because you as an administrator didn't take action.
Wow.
This is all coming out of New York, guys. This is New York and California bullshit happening right here because guess where these companies are?
Exactly.
New York and California. So
But then
yeah.
it starts bleeding over into other corporations, and it makes its way across the
Sure.
fruited plain, and now we all have it. It
makes-
happens.
It's HR buzzwords, man.
Exactly.
It kind of something you just said. If you do, let's just say you're a contractor for one of these big companies that has a policy like that. That one of the prerequisites for you to become a contractor for that company is that you also have to adopt whatever their
Oh, it happens all the
Sure.
time.
Yeah, well, we have a friend that was talking about tax ramifications for doing business in California, even though his business is in Texas.
Right. That's crazy. What?
That's
I have no
insane.
vote. I don't have it. I don't have a vote there. So
Yeah.
how can you
I don't
tax
get
me if
that
I don't have a
either.
vote there?
And I think it's really sad, but this is kind of one of the many things that are the conundrum of social media and the guys that own social media. Because we also were talking about, so we talked about the bans and the ramifications
Right.
that go with it. But as we're going through it, we find that they're establishing a Supreme Court.
Supreme Court. Yeah, they're going to come up with a Supreme Court in Facebook to be able to make judgment calls on questionable material. It's like you, Graham. You'd go before the Supreme Court, and they'd make a ruling that you were a pervert.
So, something kind of occurred to me this morning about this whole Supreme Court thing. Is, and now this is how I kind of logically it made sense. Is if you're setting up a Supreme Court
Yeah.
of sorts for this kind of stuff, doesn't the fact that you're having to set this thing up tell you that the people who are filing grievances against the decision that you made
Right.
tell you that public opinion is the opposite of why you're setting this court up? Is you're pushing back because my opinion is this,
Right.
and so I'm telling you that the opinion of America is more in line with what I say than versus what you're trying to force us to.
Well, to your point, they're hoping you accept verbatim what they say.
Yeah, accept
as if it's a Supreme Court of the United States.
Yeah.
And this is here's the funny thing about it. They self-appoint themselves. Supreme Court justices are appointed and confirmed by the President of Congress.
No, this is the people picking the people.
Yeah.
I prefer that, since it's a bunch of nerds running this thing, I was kind of going with the Lord of the Rings aspect of it.
Right.
I think they should call themselves the Council of Social Justice Warrior
Elders.
Yeah. I think that's a perfect fitting for...
Well, the Supreme Court is a very disingenuous, misleading
It
term.
is. It makes it sound like it's going to be fair.
It's to elicit compliance.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
They're going to be like the fucking Candy Crush of lawmaking.
That's exactly what it sounds like.
That's a great one, Graham.
That's exactly what I think it is. Well, it's funny because it brings us to a question then. So if we have the most widely used platforms, we'll say, and they're all buying each other up and they're all part of each other now. So you have Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, all those. At what point in time, I mean, when people first got on there, they were able to publish content and generate revenue from those entities. Now they've taken that ability completely away and they've held it for themselves. What part do they then become a publisher?
And it's been suggested. I mean, this is nothing new. This has gone around inside Congress as they interviewed what's his name? Why is he escaping me now? The guy that made. Thank you. That was brought up several times in the course of those hearings, and he totally did not want that to happen. You could see it on his face every time they mentioned it. It was like a look of fear because he knew what that was going to entail. And if you would have had YouTube and Google's representation up there, they would have been making the same face.
Sure.
Their terrifying point is you own your content at that point.
Right.
When they make this a publisher, you own the content. They don't. And that's their big thing right now is they hold all the cards. When I make a video and stick it on YouTube, they own that now. That's their thought process. And when you sign their EULA and when you agree to everything, they now own all that.
So the thing that kind of occurs to me is not only with my most recent experience, what the things that Ken has brought up about, publisher and the Supreme Court thing. I'm thinking if you take all of these incidents that have happened, they, to me, are like a sounding call that another platform needs to bubble to the surface.
Yeah. That's usually what happens,
But the thing is like, because I do searches like this all the time, is, hey, is there like the next, what's the next emerging whatever?
Right.
Social media. And I can't find anything.
It's because it's been stifled. It's because you have so few people holding the cards. When you look at really who controls Silicon Valley, it's a very few select group of people. And they've got a death grip on it. I mean, the technology is held in a small, tight circle.
Oh, yeah.
And that's why you don't see the growth in it that you do in, let's say, other industries. Let's say like an auto industry, where you have a vehicle. Let's say somebody that makes a vehicle. Well, I can take that and I can improve on it. And I can make it mine, right? I can change things up.
You're describing what's called an aftermarket.
It is. Well, that's where it starts, and then other commerce springs out of it. You know what I mean?
And the internet doesn't have that ability, or does it? Because we were talking about Brave and other things today.
It does, but it's so stifled. I mean, when you look at Facebook and what they can do with content, and when you look at Google and what they can do with content to squash it, and they do. I mean, we know that they do this. There's documented cases where Facebook and Google come in and they squash stuff that you put out there.
So
that's what it was about when he was before Congress.
What's to stop
Zuckerberg
producers of publishing software say that basically you used our program to develop your content, so we actually own the format that it's on?
Well, and it's funny. I sat through a security symposium online here the other day, and it really got a lot of gears turning in my head about a lot of different directions. But one of the primary themes is liability. It's really what it's going to boil down to. I see where you're going with that, but it's going to boil down to liability, and you're going to start seeing more and more people try that avenue. I think that social media and internet browsing, basically the internet in general, is fixing to become very litigious. That's what I gathered from this security symposium.
Yeah, because of the cost of hacking.
Right.
Yeah.
That's one aspect of it, but also what you're saying is who owns rights to this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that out there where they're trying to say, look, I originally own this content, therefore it's mine. So you have these legal battles that are fixing to take place over content.
Yeah. So what they did, this is fucked up part of this whole thing. So when it is revenue positive, they claim ownership.
Yes.
The minute it starts going revenue negative,
Yeah.
they want to shift it off to somebody else. This is classic. When you let the inmates run the asylum, this
Yes.
is what you get. Because that's what's happening here. Is that I think we were talking earlier about the latest scheme they have working is they want you to buy insurance now.
Yes. So that's where
to
the
protect yourself.
second half of this symposium went to, and we were gonna get to that, but what it basically entailed was any company that does business online is going to have to meet certain criteria with their software, with their website, with basically the handling of money on the internet. Let's look at it from that perspective. Basically, any form of handling money on the internet or publishing on the internet, you're going to have this insurance in place. And for you to have this insurance and for the insurance to actually pay out, you have to meet security criteria. I have to have this level of virus protection in place. I have to have my end users educated inside of email to this level if they don't pass a certification.
So, okay, with these few metrics that you've just mentioned,
Yeah.
does that invite yourself open to like an audit for them to come and check to make sure?
Well, that's what they were
It would
driving
have
at.
to be at some point, yeah.
Well, and then at the end of it, they were talking about we're going to have government regulation of all of this. So there again, the government's going to want to step in and collect their tax, and you basically just unfreed the whole internet at that point. It'll become a controlled substance.
And it's funny with these people. This is the death of 1,000 paper cuts with them, because you remember when they were trying to figure out how to tax revenue off the internet.
Yeah. Well, remember they were going to tax email. That was their first, because Al Gore said, we can't tax stamps anymore. Nobody sends anything via the mail.
Right.
To take a page out of your book, Ken, is, okay, so when social media becomes so cumbersome that it makes me want to pull my fucking hair out, and I get to the point where I was like, fuck you, fuck you, social media.
Oh,
I need you. Which ordinarily I wouldn't say, because when I think of what we're doing plus every other business out there,
the marketing is just so great. Potential.
Yes,
the potential for marketing is huge.
You know, how huge of an impact is it going to make on businesses that rely a lot on the existence of social
That's
media?
what they're counting on.
Yeah.
So people will fear that they won't have a business if it goes away, so they don't make the decision to get off of social media, and they just fucking tolerate it.
Exactly.
Well, they prop you up. So every business I've been involved in talks about how to optimize your social media capabilities.
Right.
And so what they do is they get you started off on the free stuff, and now you have to pay to boost everything. You and I talk about this all the time with the podcast. And what's really funny is I'm laughing because as we're talking, I'm scrolling my social media page.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to make a quick example of something that might be a little off topic, but we'll get right back on it.
Yeah.
So day before yesterday, I made a post. I used the term LexisNexis in the post.
Yeah.
You know what I got on my
Search engine stuff. How to search people.
No.
How to get a new
Basically,
car.
the LexisNexis website asked me if I'd like to join it.
Yeah.
And all I did was type it in. I didn't link it at all.
So it knew it cached it when you typed
it's
it.
pretty bizarre how that shit happens. I mean,
It's powerful.
but it is. So you look at the whole thing to where they've decided now that they're going to use that to generate revenue. We were talking about why other pages or other sites haven't taken off. It's because this is the Medusa. This is the Medusa of the internet web browsers. They've gotten in bed with developmental dollars, with Google and all these other companies.
Well, don't you remember when Chrome first started? How great it was! It was a fast browser. You did everything fast. It was intuitive. Now look
it's got
at
a
it.
gazillion things running in the background.
Go turn Chrome off and then go look and see what you've got running afterwards. There's tons of Chrome crap still running in the background.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so to that point, so I was having this weird thing happen a couple of weeks ago. Where,
And I named you.
Yeah, so I had, no matter what, okay, if I wanted to open up a new window and search something out, there was this Bing redirect that was happening. So I learned that, like, if for some reason Chrome shut down improperly, it would ask me, hey, do you want to restore what you were doing?
Yep.
Yes.
Well, basically the restore was me continuing saying, yes, I want to continue to have this problem again.
Exactly.
So what I ended up doing was I would I followed this guy's advice. I get a lot of good advice on Reddit.
Yeah.
And this guy said, "Hey,
well, you know, that's one of the
basically
few.
follow these
That's one of the
steps."
few open. It's funny. I like that you like Reddit because it's one of the few left places, untouched places on the internet.
Yeah.
It's still free.
Yeah,
It's like free thought.
there's an element of anarchy there.
Yes, it is, but it's fun.
But
It's fun. Hey, that's part of freedom, man.
Right.
You know what I mean?
it actually reminds me a lot of the old bulletin boards from a long time ago.
Yeah.
Or the
BBCs.
Usernet
Yeah.
used to be around.
Yeah, I remember that.
So now, and there's also a fringe there that motherfucks people about firearms and all the
Sure.
things that we.
But dude, is that not freedom?
Yeah,
you know?
I don't motherfuck.
Yeah, I know,
somebody because their opinion is different than mine. Until you want to step to me,
Yeah.
and want to do something, then we'll then it's a different conversation.
But again, and I agree with you. You know, we're all on the same page with that. But
Right.
again, that's still freedom in its rawest form. I mean, that's what you got to love about it.
Right.
And that's the funny thing is when you boil it all down and you look at what we've talked about here, they're taking that away from us. It's like they try
Yes,
in every aspect of life to just suck it out of you.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer that we're just allowing it to happen.
We're
Yeah,
sitting back.
You know, and that's the sad fact, man. Is
You're
it's like-
trading convenience, man,
Yeah,
for your freedom. It's that simple.
Don't you think though? At some point, because I think tailing off the fringe of what both y'all were talking about earlier, it's kind of almost forcing the hand of a new technology to replace it.
It has to because it's gonna find
Yeah.
it's gonna find a way. You've got to
Yeah.
keep believing that this is
So
gonna find a way.
There was this thing I read this morning because I was trying to gather my thoughts about because I was reading your text about this is what we talked about on Monday. So as you're reading through and you're trying to collect your thoughts, I'm also looking at what's scrolling through the news today. And so I love reading TechCrunch.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Tech Radar,
Yeah.
TechCrunch,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So one of the articles that I ran across in TechCrunch this morning, it was Amazon. Okay, which to me, I'm like, I don't. My head wanted to explode when I saw this, but it was Amazon's coming up with some new tool within I guess Amazon Market or whatever that will allow your account to alert you when you're getting low on something. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, long time ago, I used to be your memory.
Yeah.
Memory and just putting my eyes on whatever I see
So,
is getting low.
I used
But
to
I'm
think
trying
for
to understand,
myself,
low on what something you bought.
Low
Based,
like if you
Milk.
bought milk,
yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Yeah,
Oils.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you buy milk and somehow there's like particularly if you link your Amazon to your fucking refrigerator or
Which some people do. Yeah.
or actually think about it in these terms as I know people that and I'm actually done this before only because the cost versus buying it in a brick and mortar store, it made more sense for me to fucking have it shipped to me.
Based on your buying history, you are using this much. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
if you bought like a whatever quantity of fucking toilet paper it is, it will basically look at the calendar and say, okay, theoretically,
you've wiped your ass 587 times. It's time for new toilet paper.
By this time, you should start looking at your freaking toilet paper purchase. Which I'm like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
really?
Well, we're going to charge you an environmental surcharge based on your toilet paper use.
Hey, whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Hey,
yeah.
this guy hit on a
Ken's already 4 steps down the road.
idea. $1 million idea.
Yeah, because that's what they'll do. No, they are actually 4 steps down the road. Everybody, they live off the fact that people look at them as a bunch of hapless boobs. Mm-hmm. They're not.
Yeah.
Okay? They're institutionalized, educated people.
Yep.
So they understand models and matrices and running game theory all the time. So they know that if they outright introduce shit, people are going to reject it. It's like telling your kid, don't touch the light. What's the first fucking thing they do? They touch the light.
Right.
So what do? They make you afraid of the dark, or they make you opposite of that.
Right.
So, it's the opposite of, well, if the monster goes away if you turn the light off. Oh, I'm going to want to turn the light off because the monster will leave.
Right.
So that's what they're doing. They're doing all this shit. You were talking about the 100-year plan earlier. This is part of that mentality. So what they do is they walk you hand into submission.
What else can I make him afraid of?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly it. And then I'm going to sell you just a small piece of comfort. But just realize if you don't pay me next month, you don't get this comfort.
I'm not going to hug you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's amazing how simple this shit is.
Fear is your only guide on the internet.
It is, for sure. So one of the other things that you might want to, we might want to touch on is the fact that right now sharing is a huge thing for all of us.
Yeah.
And so we share family photos, and we not only take a family photo that we receive from, say, from our aunt, we share it with multiple people, and we put it on our walls.
Yeah.
And we put it on our tweets and our Instagrams. At some point in time, they were talking about the copyright of that material.
Yeah.
And you not having permission.
It goes back to that whole publisher aspect of who owns this.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's what ends up happening. So say, for example, there was a story about a guy that I forget what it was. I wish I could remember it. But they went back in his Twitter 8 years ago. And they found something he said that got him. Oh, it was the beer sign guy at the football game.
Yeah.
It was the beer sign guy that was holding up the beer sign at football, and Budweiser gave him all this free beer.
Yep.
And then somebody went back in his Twitter and found something he said that was socially unacceptable, and they jerked his deal.
Yep.
That was 8 years ago. And then look what happened to Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
With the Oscars, and they found that happening to him. And
How dare you? You should have always felt the way that you felt 8 years ago.
Yeah.
However you feel then.
Social justice really is the new Spanish Inquisition. I mean, it is. There's no doubt about it. It's unbelievable.